Hey watch friends, today we're going to be taking a look at this upcoming offering from the microbrand MMI, and this is their Sky-Hunter. This will be launching on their website on December 1st of 2022. First, for administrative matters, I do want to mention this is a prototype that was loaned to the channel for review, so if you see scratches, scuffs, etc., it can be attributed to that. Additionally, if you saw the paid promotion banner, they do intend to send me a production version, and as always, I want to be transparent with you all about that. We won't be looking at the packaging today as that's still being finalized, but we'll take a deep dive look into the watch itself. As far as the warranty, it comes standard with a 1-year warranty, always good to see 2 or more. However, that being said, once we look at the specs on this, it has solid components, so I don't expect you're going to have any issues. The case is coming in at 38.5 millimeters, and that's measured roughly from the 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock position. The bezel does step down slightly, and this is coming in at 37.9 millimeters. The lugs are a strap change friendly 20 millimeters. The lug to lug is coming in at 45.4 millimeters. However, since this does have male end links, I went ahead and measured that as well, and that is coming in at 51.4 millimeters. You'll get to see this on my 6.5-inch wrist. I think it fits just fine. The total thickness is coming in at a nice slim 10.7 millimeters, and that's including this flat sapphire crystal, which does have inner AR coating as well, and we'll of course look at that in outdoor conditions. The movement, as I alluded to, is a nice reliable movement. It has a Miyota 9015. If you're not familiar with that, automatic movement. It is going to be a higher beat, 28,800 beats per hour, hacking, hand winding, all that kind of good stuff. So it's pretty much a rock solid movement, and I think, especially at the price point that we'll talk about further, is a great choice. The water resistance is coming in at 100 meters or 10 atmospheres. So in keeping with the pilot style, I think it's sufficient water resistance, and it's going to be up to your daily needs, though not one you're going to want to go diving with. The bracelet, sized to my 6.5-inch wrist, this total is coming in at 133 grams. It's really not too bad at all. I would say on the lighter side of a middleweight, so slightly heavier than a featherweight, but certainly not one that's going to weigh you down either. So now that we have the basic specs out of the way, let's go ahead and take a deeper dive into the watch itself. First, for the colors. This is going to be available in 5 different variations. There's the champagne that we're looking at today. There's additionally a black version, a silver version, a very vibrant blue version, as well as a white version. And it should be noted that both the blue as well as the white are full lume variants. The characteristics of this, they're going to have a texture depending on which variation that you get as to which texture you get. The full lume variations are going to be more of a satin kind of finish for that. However, the one that we're looking at today is going to be consistent across the other 3, and that is going to be a horizontal brushing, so that does run from like the 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It is a nice subtle effect, and I do think it plays with the light nicely as well. Across the lineup, you're going to see that signature MMI date window, and that's what those cutouts are in the middle there. So kind of radiating out from the center, and you can see that disc going around, in this case a very vibrant orange, that allows you to pick that up. And it's a very unique application as opposed to a traditional date window, and that's become, again, my signature characteristic if you've seen their prior watches. It does have printing for the logo at the 12 o'clock, automatic down at the 6 o'clock position. Then of course, looking at the date wheel, you're going to see the date that is printed, and that does go in a counterclockwise direction in keeping with the movement of this particular date wheel. Going out from there, you do have the numerals in keeping with a pilot style, and those are going to be printed as well, though they do almost take on like a sandwich kind of effect depending on the way the light's hitting them. Going out from there, you do have a chapter ring, and that actually has a very nice, highly polished accent kind of lip bevel that's going up to that. So I think that's a nice touch as well. And then on the chapter ring, you do have individual minute hashes as well as sub hashes, which I believe are in a 5th scale. And then at the 5-minute or 5-second increments, you do have the numerals as well. So again, I think very much in keeping with that pilot type vibe. Shifting over to the hardware. The hardware is somewhat reminiscent of like a sword type handset. However, I would say that this is more accurately a syringe because of those tips on the ends. They are going to be highly polished, and to my eye, they at least pick up a champagne color hue similar to this. I can't tell if it's just picking up the dial, or if you hold up white next to it, it does reflect that back as well, but I believe it is actually a slightly gold coloration. The second hand is going to be an arrow style second hand, again with the polishing, and it does have a red accent tip out towards the end to help with that legibility. As far as the application of lume, This is going to be old radium that's applied to the handset as well as the printing on the numerals. Consistent with printing as well as old radium, I would say that this one isn't going to be the strongest performer in the world. However, I've found that it performs adequately, so nothing really to complain about there, but certainly if you're looking for a loom monster, this isn't going to be the one. Shifting over to the bezel, this does have a fixed bezel, and that bezel, as you can see, has a very steep slope to that. And the finishing throughout is going to be polishing. That's true of the lip as well as the actual bezel going up to the crystal as well. Taking a look at the case here at first impression looks like just a slab. However, it does actually have very subtle curves, and if you look from front to rear, you can see it kind of bulges out there, but then additionally it does have, for the down turning of the lugs, that's very subtly done there as well, and I think that's a nice touch. It does sit slightly proud of the case back, but it's pretty close that I would say it's about in line. The finishing on that is going to be a vertical or horizontal brushing running the length of this, so running from front to rear, a nice linear brushing there. Shifting over to the lugs, you can see a nice flow to the lugs there. I think it seamlessly tapers to the bracelet. And then over on the crown side, there is no crown guard, which again, I think is in keeping with the style of this watch. The crown itself is coming in at 6.4 millimeters. This is a screw down construction, which you'd probably expect with the 100 millimeter spec. As you can see, it does have a nice milling here, which is very easy to grip a hold of. No problem accessing that and turning. Same thing is true for popping that as well. It is on the exterior going to be signed, and then as we saw in the loom footage, that does actually have an application of loom to the crown itself as well. So always a fun touch there. Shifting over to the case back is a screw construction as well. This is going to be solid, so no exhibition window, and it's a mix of brushing and blasting that is applied to the case back here. That gives a nice contrast, and you can see text going all the way around, giving you your basic information about the watch. The centerpiece, though, is going to be the plane that's in the middle, hence the Sky-Hunter getting its namesake there. Shifting over to the bracelet is coming in at a 20 millimeters, of course, at the lugs, but then it does taper down to 18 millimeters at the clasp. As we already looked at, it does have male end links, and the finishing is going to be brushing, running the length of the bracelet, and that's true all the way around. So the main polish accent you get is going to be on the bezel, otherwise it's principally going to be brushing. This is a 3-link construction, or an oyster, if you want, for that. As far as holding it together, this is held in with pins, so you're not going to have to worry about screws backing out, but it will be a little more of a chore to adjust initially. I will have down in the description a link if you want to add a kit, or if you need to add a kit to be able to adjust that. As far as the clasp is a fold-over type construction. It is signed on the fold-over itself. It again does carry through with the brushing, and it does have a double pusher configuration on the inside of that. As far as the inner bridge, you do have milling, so it's a nice clean application there. And then on the exterior, you have 5 micro adjustment holes, so you're going to be able to get that size to your need, despite the larger links on this. As far as the links go, I found it has decent articulation. As is usually the case with an oyster style bracelet, it doesn't have the best drape in the world. However, I find it has plenty of articulation to be able to catch onto your wrist without having any issues there. Alright, so now that we have the basic specs out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at some comparisons and get a feel for the sizing of this. First, I have this next to an RZE Fortitude. This one's coming in, it's a little larger, and it's an atypical pilot style. This is around 41 millimeters, so it gives you an idea there as far as just the overall dial presence compared to those two. Bringing in one that's a little bit closer, and a little closer to the style as well. This is the Zelos Comet, and you can see here with just kind of the application of the numerals, and then you have the applied versus the printed, just to get a feel for that, and then same thing with the sizing as well. So this one I believe is coming in at 39 millimeters if I recall correctly, so pretty close to the total sizing of this one. Alright, so now that we have a better feel for the watch itself, let's go ahead and wrap things up with my personal view of the positives, the critiques, as well as the overall summary. First, for the positives, I've got to say the value on this is excellent. We haven't talked about the pricing. This is going to be launching at $305. That's converted to US dollars, so that's an approximate price. But $305 with a Miyota 9 series movement, sapphire crystal, nice slim measurements and overall specs. I think a clean design, 316L stainless steel bracelet, etc. I think it's packing a lot of value. This is going to be signature MMI style. So if you like MMI style, this carries over directly from the turret and some of the other pieces that we've looked at, particularly with that date window cutout in there. So I think that's excellent. The legibility is good with an asterisk, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I think with the syringe tips, they come out nicely to the chapter ring, the numeral application, etc. I think you can very clearly make everything out, especially once you get used to reading that date window that's not in a fixed position. As far as the actual finishing of the watch, especially for being a prototype, I think the finishing has been very solid. The brushing is cleanly applied, as is the polishing here. No real issues with the bracelet, hasn't pulled hair, decent articulation as we talked about. Overall, for a $300 price tag, I think you're more than getting your money's worth. And then the profile. This is very slim. It doesn't pick up as well on camera. However, when you have this on wrist, I think this wears very nicely, and at 10.7 millimeters, really can't complain there at all. So that's excellent. As far as the critiques though, I mentioned that we'd come back to the legibility. On this particular color variant, I've got to say it's a little bit monochromatic, and as a result, I do think you can kind of lose the handset between having the old radium and then that champagne dial, as well as having the polish for the handset. Depending on the way the light is hitting this, it can wash out a bit. I would probably like a little more contrast on this variant, but I don't think that that's true of all of them. And even on this one, it's a nice look. I think aesthetically it is pleasing. It just does impact the legibility a bit. On the bracelet itself, there are no quick release spring bars. That's something I definitely would have liked to have seen there. I've gotten spoiled with them, and if you want to change over to straps, it's definitely, in my opinion, a must to be able to just easily pinch a hold of those as opposed to having to bust out your spring bar tool, which I'll have one of those linked in the description as well if you need to pick one of those up. The dial itself, while I talked about the legibility and being pretty good, this for many is going to be potentially a busy dial, and that's especially true, and it's true of all the MMI watches. If you're not used to that date window in the middle as far as having all those numerals, you've got the numerals that are for your primary markers, and then you have the numerals as well as hashes on your chapter ring. There is a lot going on, so I'm glad they didn't put extra lines of text. They only have the single line of automatic down at the 6 o'clock, so I do think they did their best to keep it clean. However, for some, it's still going to be on the busy side. And then finally, we talked about the loom. This is one, I think it is adequate for what it is, but it's definitely not going to be winning any loom wars, so do be aware of that. That's just kind of the nature of old radium imprinting, but really not too bad at all. So where does that leave us? At the end of the day, I think this delivers on what it's intending to execute. I think you get a good value for it overall. I think it delivers a nice slim pilot watch that's going to be relatively comfortable on wrist, especially with that slim profile. It's an uncommon styling, especially with that date incorporation that they have here. The specs for the money, I think, are fantastic. So at the end of the day, if you like the MMI style, if you're a fan of this watch, I really don't think you can go wrong at $300. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. If you did enjoy it, please do tap that like button. Additionally, if you haven't done so already, give that subscribe button a tap. Thanks for watching.